Hello and welcome everyone to the Amateur Commentator. We're here yet again to discuss another Formula One race. This time it's the qualifying at the Miami Grand Prix, the first Miami Grand Prix. And well, it was a good day for Ferrari, not that great for Red Bull, considering that the first row is captured by Ferrari. So, saying that, let me welcome Anshul to the show. Hi, Anshul.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, not a great day for you, I guess.
I'll
After the
not
highs
say
of Imola.
I'll not say that. It's just that the starting grid is not something which I would have hoped for. But the difference between the top four, top five is not significant. So that is something which I'm not really concerned about. But yes, come race day tomorrow, it will be much more interesting.
Yeah. Before moving ahead, I'd request everyone to kindly just like, share, and subscribe our content. Please give us feedback on how we can improve and what else would you like to see. So moving ahead, the first thing that strikes you there is it is one of the better looking F1 circuits. I think at least for me. I mean, I really it's dope. This circuit is just brilliant. It's a bit dangerous. There are, I guess, if you see the circuit, the turns from 13 to 16, and when that freeway crosses over the circuit, that it's
Yeah,
a bit of a dangerous place. The risk and reward is not that well matched, I would say. Uh, but it looked great. There was great support for Formula One. I mean, we don't like to bring Drive to Survive into the picture a lot, but I feel that it is having an impact in US. I mean, I could see support for all the teams. I felt that Ferrari had a great deal of support there, but it was there for almost all the teams. Uh, so and a lot of Brits were there as well. So the teams were well represented.
absolutely.
Let's move to Q1. I would ask you to just give a brief download on what happened there and what's the deal with Esteban Ocon and what all happened in Q1.
I think one of the things which you mentioned while describing the track, it's not a straightforward track. It's a bit risky. It's not forgiving track. And the same thing happened with Esteban Ocon in FP3, where he crashed, and that's the same corner where Sainz also crashed day before, in FP2. The problem here is the supporting grid or the wall. It is entire concrete. That's why the impact was huge, and it was a significant impact. That's why the support staff or the engineers were not able to fix the car entirely for Ocon so that he can participate in the qualifying session. But saying that, I think apart from Williams, which was pretty much expected considering the nature of the track, but it was a bit surprising to see Magnussen out in Q1 itself. Initially, when he started the season, after all the controversies which surrounded the team Haas, he performed really well in the starting. But what we're seeing in the last couple of races, Schumacher is able to outperform at least in the qualification scenario, overqualify his teammate. So yeah, and Zhou, I think he was a bit unlucky. Spectators who would have been watching might feel that he was complaining, but he was actually not, because even when we were discussing off the yesterday, it is very difficult, this particular circuit, because there are a lot of passages which are very narrow, and when you are on an out lap and you are doing a fast lap, it's a very different scenario. When you have slow cars and the other car is doing their fast lap, it becomes very tricky, and especially the chicane which you talked about in corners 14 and 15. It kinds of, it's an incline, and if you are off by a couple of inches here and there, you can directly end up on the wall.
Yeah.
So that's overall take what I have for the Q1.
Yeah, I feel for Zhao as well. I felt that and looking at the end when you see Bottas in Q3 doing really well in the first three rows, it did feel like Zhao got a bad deal there. I mean, there was traffic and he couldn't do much about it. I was also surprised to see Albon not getting into Q2 because he has actually driven pretty
Yeah.
well throughout the season. Uh, what we heard later was that the tires didn't warm up properly, and that's why his pace was down. Other than that, it didn't offer much. there wasn't much action, I would say, in Q1. Yes, the track was a bit dangerous. I think the drivers also knew that, so perhaps they didn't take as much risk as they could have taken in the qualification. But yeah, been Ocon out. Ocon has been someone who has not been too visible throughout the last four races, but he has
Yeah.
done fairly well for himself, and then Alpine has done quite well as well. So yeah, the other thing that I actually noticed in Q1 as well was that Ferrari did look pretty strong in the low speed corners. It is not something new. This has been the case like throughout the last four races throughout the season, and they were significantly quicker. I mean, Leclerc was almost 2/10 of a second quicker than Max in those corners. So that was a good that's a good advantage for them. And even in while racing, also in the main race, this could prove to be an advantage. So yeah, Albon out, Magnussen surprisingly being outperformed by Schumacher, and he was out. Both the Williams were out, and Zhau and Ocon. So let's move to Q2. Were you surprised that Red Bull started with two new tires? Both the cars had new tires, or were you hoping the same? Because Ferrari had older tires, and it looked like Red Bull had taken the better decision, and because Max was significantly faster than the others. But then it kind of, I think, didn't matter at the end. What was your thought about Q2 and what happened there?
See, I am not surprised, what Red Bull did, because in the last few races, what we have seen, Red Bull are able to manage the tire temperature much better as comparison to Ferrari, barring few instances here and there. So that's why they are much more confident, at least from the tire temperature point of view and the grip point of view, when they are starting. Now, you also spoke about, Ferrari being much faster in the corners. So that was pretty visible, at least in the sector one, where Ferrari are much more stronger. But what they do not expect, what they have, particularly in this race, is there are 3 DRS zones and there are 2 very long straights. And on those 2 sectors, Red Bull are relatively much more faster as comparison to Ferrari. So it will be a very interesting thing to see in the race, because traditionally what we have seen in the last 5 races, it's difficult to overtake the leader. Now, this is something which can go against Ferrari if the DRS zones are not pretty well managed by Leclerc, or he is not able to maintain sufficient gap with the drivers who is behind them. So that is one thing to watch out between Ferrari and Red Bull. Coming to Q2, I think the thing which we spoke about, it's unforgiving track. That was also visible in the nature of how Russell drove. He tried twice, not just once, and both the time there were mistakes which did not allow him to go for a faster lap. And eventually that was a downfall for him, where he ended up in the bottom 5 in Q2. But apart from him, probably, Vettel, Alonso, they had a fairly decent run in the Q2. It's just that the other drivers who were there in the top 10, they were much more quicker than them.
Yeah, I think Vettel did admit that he made a mistake in the chicane, and that lost him a couple of tenths of a second. That's why he was out. Russell surprisingly had a bad day, whereas Hamilton did quite decently. There were a few mistakes in Q1 from Hamilton as well, but I think he recovered pretty well at the later stages. But it does look like Mercedes is are still a bit way off from still some way off from both the Ferraris and the Red Bulls. Daniel Ricciardo, what's happening there? Because Lando Norris is actually doing pretty well, and Ricciardo is not. He is nowhere close to Norris, and this would be hurting him as well, because, well, he has been someone who has been on the focus of F1. He's a good driver. He's a great personality, but he is completely off the boil now.
Yeah, I think even I'm not sure whether that's still the rumors or that has already been confirmed, but he was expected to move at the end of the season. Whether that is something which is voluntary or that is something which is coming from the team orders, I think after that particular news, it has not been a smooth run for Daniel Ricciardo. Even in Australia, it was an okay race for the home race. Even in the races like the last race at Italy, right? Norris, although until Leclerc made a mistake, he was still there at P4 comfortably. But Ricciardo was nowhere near. Even after the incident which happened in the first lap, There were instances where he could have improved, but he was nowhere else to be seen in the top 10 or top 15. So yeah, I think more than the racing, there are also out of the track issues which Ricciardo is dealing with, and he has to put those things behind very quickly to be competitive in the season.
Yeah, before we move to Q3, I would like to say that Gasly and Tsunoda were pretty impressive. They've been doing that. Uh, Sometimes the car has not supported them, it has broken down and all, but both of them were quite good this time around. There were mistakes, but they did really well to get into Q3 and manage good starting grid positions for them. Lance Stroll again had a good day.
Yeah.
I think this is one of those tracks that he has grown up. I mean, not exactly this track, but he has grown up in these parts of the world, and he knows the temperature. He knows what kind of circuit to expect, and I think he felt pretty comfortable. I mean, Vettel did make mistakes, but Stroll looked quite good throughout the qualifications.
Absolutely, I was really impressed with how Tsunoda and Stroll drove, because because at one end we were seeing experienced drivers who were making mistakes and were not able to adapt to the nature of the new track as early as possible. But there were very few instances where we saw Stroll or Tsunoda make mistakes of those levels. So I was really impressed with those two drivers, not just because of the result, but at least in terms of being able to adapt to the new track and not making those many mistakes.
Yeah. Talking about making mistakes, actually Tsunoda did touch the wall on that turn, but and that is when I felt that this is going to happen a lot during the race. I just hope that it does not, like, this race isn't a stop-start race, because a lot of them are just getting into the wall. Because that could be the track looks good, everything looks good, but that is one area which could be pretty bad if the drivers make mistake in those seconds, in those turns. Let's move to Q3. Just before the start of Q3, there were complaints by Alonso about Sainz obstructing. Well, the stewards looked into it, didn't find anything, and then we saw both the Ferraris really doing absolutely well. I mean, they did two great flying laps. At one point, it felt like Sainz would go ahead of Leclerc, but it was the last sector where Leclerc has had a better speed. How do you rate Q3 for both the Ferraris and both the Red Bulls?
The result which we have right now, P1 to P4, I think that speaks in terms of the timings they did. Absolutely, no question about that. But one thing where I felt, even when Verstappen was there on the provisional pole for some time, it was not the best lap which he could have done. There were a few errors on his behalf during the later part of Q3 that also hampered his timing, which he could have matched probably. But again, that's in the hindsight. But what we also saw again here is, while he was trying the faster lap towards the end of the session, he also made mistakes. Whether it was because he thought that the timing which he was already put on the board is sufficient enough to guarantee him the pole, or whether he was not able to just make a fast start after the particular lap. So that is an interesting thing to see. As we have already spoken about, it is an unforgiving circuit. So the lesser number of mistakes which the drivers will be able to do on Sunday, I think they'll be much more beneficial for
them. How do you see Hamilton performing here? I mean, it was a fairly decent qualification for him. Posted a good time. Third row, he would be besides Valtteri Bottas. Bottas might want to put forth some points there. So, what do you expect from Hamilton?
I think Hamilton has to do what Norris did in the last race. He does not have a car to challenge Red Bull and Ferrari as of now, but I would not be surprised if there is any DNF among the top four. So Bottas and Hamilton both have to be there to capitalize that situation and maybe fight for that third podium or the second podium in case there are multiple DNFs among the top four. Again, I'm not saying that this will happen, but there is an outside chance because of the nature of the track.
Yeah, because of the nature of the track and because of the history of the last four races this season, we have seen either the Ferrari or the Red Bull,
Yeah.
at least one of them not finishing the race. Uh, so yeah, it could be anything. I think this is a good chance for Hamilton to get into the podium. Uh, it's sad to see Russell not in the top 10. He has been one of the most consistent drivers through the last four races. So
I would not be
what are your
surprised if
expectations?
he's fighting around the top 5 or top 6 by the end of the race. Because yes, he was a bit unlucky because of the two chances he made mistakes in Q2. But I would not be surprised if he's there at P6 or P7 by end of the race.
Yeah, my only concern is that there's a Aston Martin of Stroll, which is ahead of him, and it sometimes Stroll makes it difficult for others to kind of
Yeah.
cross him, and he has a slower car, so that slower, at least relatively slower car than Mercedes. So that could be something that Russell needs to watch out. He needs to get off the track. He needs to get a good start and then kind of come as close to the top six as possible. So, what are your predictions now for what's going to happen tomorrow? How do you see the race panning out?
I think if Sainz is able to stop Verstappen in the first corner, it will be very difficult for Verstappen to fight for the P1. He might have to contend at the end for P2 or P3. But in case if Verstappen is able to cross Sainz within the first couple of corners and he's fighting Leclerc, it will be very difficult for Leclerc to hold on and defend the position, because as we spoke about initially, we have three DRS zones, and among those three, two DRS zones are very long straights. And we have already seen how strong Red Bull is, at least on the straights. So it will be very difficult for Leclerc to defend in those three DRS zones if Verstappen is very close to him after, say, initial laps. But say if Sainz is able to hold on to Verstappen for 3 or 4 laps, and by the time Leclerc is able to maintain a gap of 3 to 4 seconds, then it will be very difficult for Red Bull to get anything out of it apart from P3 or P2.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that Sainz has a good day because he has had a stinker of luck in this season, and just that. Well, some luck seems to have gone his way. Let's see what happens. What happens in the race? Hoping for a great Miami GP, first of its kind, and we're hoping more and more GPs in US. They look fun. The new Vegas track also look great. So next season we'll be having three of the races in US. So that could be fun. Any last word?
I think what drivers need to watch out is the last sector chicane, and they need to utilize the 3 DRS zone. All the straights are very long, and that will provide them ample of opportunity to overtake. They just have to be there to take those opportunities. That's it.
Yeah, I just hope that it's a good race. We don't see a lot of DNFs, and hoping to see an exciting race. So thank you everyone. Thank you for watching. Just request everyone again to kindly like, share, subscribe our content, and we'll come back with the once the race is finished, and we'll give our view on what happened during the race. So thank you again.